Generally incurring tech debt because there is some point of pressure somewhere. Like, I don't think anyone intentionally wants to create something that they do not feel proud of.
If you could rewrite any app in the world from scratch, no limits, what would it be?
Ooh, well,
Imagine this. You're leading a team, the product is alive, but every new feature feels like surgery. One fix breaks three other things. You know the code base is a mess. But do you keep patching? Or do you burn it all and start from scratch? In this episode, we sit down with Vicente Plata, a staff engineer at one of the biggest social networks in the world, who's lived through those moments where technical debt isn't just code, it's a decision about people, speed, and survival. We'll talk about the moment you realize refactoring is no longer enough, the cost of rewriting everything, and how to lead a team through that kind of reset without losing your mind. This is the scaling dilemma. Hello, Vicente.
how are you doing?
Welcome to the scaling dilemma. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for coming in, man.
No, thank you very much for the invite and for making time for me. It's a pleasure to chat with you. Finally, face to face. I think
I
we've been friends
know.
for a couple of years, but we are finally like face to face, kind of talking
Yeah.
even virtually. So that's very cool, and thank you.
Yeah, well, it's like for the people who doesn't know this brief story is like this, right? We've been following each other on X, now X, right? Speaking of which, um, we've been following each other on Twitter for like almost like 3 years, probably four, I don't know, something like that, right? So we've been there through thick and thin with the Elon Musk's acquiring acquisition and everything. But anyways, here we are finally because we also have had conversations on WhatsApp on things like that, right?
Correct. Yeah, definitely. Like very interesting ones. I think overall what you're doing for the dev community in Latam is like remarkable. I appreciate it, acknowledge it, and
Thank
yeah,
you.
it's very worth admiration. So yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay, Vicente. So tell the audience, please, here that what do you do? What is it that you do
Yeah.
for
So
a
my name
living?
is Vicente Plata, and right now, for the most part, I'm a staff software engineer at Pinterest. I've been at
Okay.
Pinterest for around a year now, and what I do is I work on the trust and safety team. So I
Mm-hmm.
lead the team from a technical standpoint that builds the tools to
Okay.
ensure that Pinterest continues being the safest place on the internet. Like that's the
Okay.
way the CEO likes to sell it: a safe,
Uh-huh.
positive, enlightening, constructive space. And well, there are going to be tools for that, right? So when you create a report on a pin, on a board, on a user, what happens depending on the jurisdiction, on like the history of the users, how do you follow along and all that. So that's pretty much what I do for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
I also got to coach like new engineers. I happen to be the only staff level engineer in Mexico at the moment, so I
Yeah.
try to coach like the rest of the engineers, or like as many as possible, and
Mm-hmm.
try to help people like do their best on their interviews and all that, right? So that's what I do for the most part on a daily basis as a job. It entails a lot of different things. Obviously, programming. I love programming, but a lot of system design, a lot of audits and reviews and documentation, what have you. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a bit of everything.
Dude, that kind of sounds overwhelming, don't you think? I mean, it has to be really easy for you. Is your day to day, but now that you mentioned this, the staff engineering part and also the tech interviews that you're helping people with, and but the way you talk about it, I mean, I can tell that you really like this situation, right?
I love it. I feel blessed. I feel very fortunate that for the last 20 years I've been able to do what I love, what I think has a lot of impact. At the end of the day,
Mhm.
like it's technology. It's about doing an alchemy of sorts with bits and bytes and sand and silicone. So for me, it's like what I always wanted. Well, for the most part of my life, what I wanted to do, I wanted to
Mhm.
be an archaeologist. Can you believe it? So
Oh my
like
God! What is
nowadays,
it?
like I
Because of Indiana Jones or
pretty
something?
much, pretty much. But all the history and artifacts and all, I love it.
Uh
We
huh.
moved to like somewhere in between the mountains of Puebla a month or so ago. So every weekend I go
Uh
to
huh.
new like archaeological sites and all and discover stuff. And that's how
Okay.
you keep rolling with. Well, so I've always wanted, for the most part of my life, I wanted to do this, and I'm
Uh-huh.
fortunate that I've been doing it for 20 years. For the most part, growing, learning a lot. So yeah, it's a hard job, but it's a fun job, and I like it a lot. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. That actually ties into something I wanted to ask you. How did you ended up being the staff engineer uh,
Well, I
on
mean,
Pinterest?
yeah. So in the case of Pinterest in particular, so something funny happens. I used to work for companies in the States and for like venture funds in Latin America as an
Mm-hmm.
advisor and a consultant and all that. But when my baby was about to be born, my baby Zelda, who is 7 months now, I
7 months.
realized that, yeah,
Congratulations, by the way, Zelda.
no,
That's an
thank you,
interesting
Zelda. Yeah,
name.
yeah, no, thank you. I realized that I needed, for several reasons, something that was more stable, more predictable, and
Mm-hmm.
with a couple of benefits like paternity leave and
Yeah,
like huge insurance in case something went wrong, which fortunately didn't, but what?
yeah.
And the Pinterest folks approached me and they were like, you know what, we're building this team of trust and safety partly in Mexico. And
Mm-hmm.
we need like staff level person. You seem to match. And yeah, well, we went through, the typical DSA, algos, and system design interviews.
Yeah.
I clicked very, very nicely with my manager, with my skip, and with pretty much the whole company. And I'm like, well, it makes sense. Like, I do believe that the internet is one of the coolest inventions in the history of
Of course.
mankind. But
Yeah.
I gotta agree that there is a part of it that can be a little bit toxic and a little bit like it can take a toll from a mental health standpoint. And the fact that Pinterest is to an extent trying to address it, like for me, it meant a lot.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was also an opportunity to like have a direct impact into that in particular, right? I also have like a teenage daughter and a younger
Mm-hmm.
one, and my teenager, like she's 14, almost 15,
Okay.
and imagining that or seeing the kind of things that she saw on the internet every now and then, like it
Scary,
made
man.
me it made me a little bit queasy, to be honest. So like I can have an impact on actually creating platform that and directly impacting the health of that platform for teens, right? And for yeah, for everyone in general. So that's the TLDR of why I chose to leave the startup slash
Mm-hmm.
venture life, which obviously it had like a lot of pros. It had
Yeah.
like a lot of perks and it had like a lot of visibility and what have you. And
Mm-hmm.
then like double down on an almost full-time job. So I still do side gigs every now and then, but it's rare. It's like a one off for the most part. I'm fully dedicated to my current role. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty interesting what you say about Pinterest and now the slogan and the motto that they have in what is it like trustable? No, what is it? Do they have like a motto or I'm just
I think it's
like
a safe place in the internet, or yeah, and
safest
they
place
call
in the internet?
themselves the golden retriever of the internet because cool
Okay,
and sweet and nice and all. So yeah,
yeah,
it's an interesting.
it's funny. It's funny because I used to have therapy, and my therapist was like when we were talking about these kind of situations on the podcast and everything, and what kind of job did I have or whatever. He this guy told me like, imagine yourself as a dog. What kind of breed would you
Mhm.
be? Right. So I believe that that is the same principle right there. Like Pinterest will be like the golden retriever of that, right?
And what kind of breed would you be?
I that's one question that I couldn't answer. I was like, I've never pictured myself as a dog, but
Mm.
suddenly to my mind comes the dogs that I had in the
Mhm.
past, right? And that's somewhere it's difficult for me because most of the part with my pets and everything were like really tragic situations.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
no, I'm
so
getting cool.
I was like when the therapist told me this, I was like, okay, let's go into cat people, right? I'm gonna be more like a cat in this situation, but
Mhm.
yeah. Anyway, so and staff engineer. I mean, I've been working with a bunch of tech companies in the past, right? As you may know, in the English consultancy part, right, in the language speaking and communication and whatever. But every place I've visited, every place I've been, is like they have staff engineer, the position, but they have like a different approach in every place. So
Yeah.
what is it? What is it like in Pinterest? Because I understand that there are several staff engineers over there, right?
Yeah, there are several, and I would say across different organizations and companies, generally what you're looking for in a staff engineer is that they're able to have impact across teams and across organizations, right? So
Yeah.
you work with a staff engineer, you hire a staff engineer when you realize that the lines of teams and products are
Mm-hmm.
blurring a little bit, and you need people who can work across those lines. Now, the accountabilities and the day-to-day tasks vary widely, even inside the same company. So where I work now, I have a peer. We hired staff on my same team about 4 months ago,
Mm-hmm.
and she's more of the organizational slash DevOps kind of aura. And we never told her to. Like it
When
was
when
her choice.
when you
Yes.
say organizational, you mean like cultural and be like
Yes,
closer to the
yes, yes,
people and
yes, yes, and also how to interact with other stakeholders, right? So you have big teams and how they interact and how the communication lines are written, yeah,
mm-hmm.
like mostly to streamline like information and requests. That's
Yeah.
basically what some of them look into, right?
Okay.
She enjoys attending meetings. She enjoys creating documents,
Mm-hmm. And you
and
don't?
well, if I gotta do it, I do it. But I enjoy creating shit. So I
Yeah.
interviewed. The context is interesting because up until I would say 4 or 5 years ago, I was very much like that. Like I didn't code as much, and I
Uh-huh.
was more into team management. I was an engineering manager at Shopify and what.
Yeah.
And then I interviewed at a couple of places, trying to go back to an IC role. And the
Mm-hmm.
feedback I got consistently was that I wasn't technical enough, and that
Oh,
hurt my pride, man, because I mean
of
I
course.
yeah, no, that hurt. I used to do competitive programming competitions and be
Okay.
at Olympics and whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
when they tell you no, you're not technical enough, I go like, oh my goodness, what are you talking about, right? So that's why I start doubling down on building stuff again, and that's why I
Okay.
continue doing it to this day. And like whenever a new staff joins, I like they ping me and they say, well, because they told me that Vicente was probably the most technical of us, right? And it's
Uh-huh.
like, well, I'm not sure if it's true, but I do try to stay like very close to the code, and I do try to be part of the rituals and part of. Actually, I'm supposed to be on call now. I'm supposed to be
Oh my
like
God.
like I asked someone to cover me because I knew we were gonna shock, but that's something that like staff folks sometimes run from. But I
Uh-huh.
love it. Like I love
Yeah.
being on call. I love like volunteering to cover our people because you end up realizing and you end up figuring out a lot of stuff that you gotta go deep into the code and get very very close to the wires,
Yeah.
to metal in order to find it and to
Mm.
understand it, right? So that's what I do. Like obviously the goal is to have impact across different teams. So I
Yeah.
code not only on the stuff from my team and our products, but whatever comes across. And I try to unblock people like all across the company. When the build is broken, I'm generally and the build of a big monolith that we got, which generally breaks blocks everyone, try to jump in and fix it. And I try to like interact with a lot of stakeholders across different teams, but in technical terms for the most part, because I
Yeah.
never want to hear that feedback again of you're not technical enough, right? Like that. Yeah, that hurt my ego, so I want that to happen again.
Okay. So after you get this hit, um, did that change anything in the way you lead people or manage projects? Like,
Well, I mean, it didn't change anything in the way I managed people because I mean,
uh-huh.
at the end of the day, you generally have like this set of like accountabilities or role guides or whatever, and you just gotta motivate them to get it into. But in the way that I behave on a daily basis, I did start to pick up lead code again and like crazy, and like very very focused kind of thing, and it's something that I generally try to promote like
Hmm.
with other people.
Yeah.
It may not be like what a lot of people want to hear, but it's true. Like mm, you gotta walk the walk,
Oof.
and do what you gotta do on it. So yeah, I started looking into more IC kind of roles. So
Yeah.
After that experience at Shopify, I helped co-founding a startup,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and I built most of the initial implementation of the startup. Then I hired a team in Russia and a team in Latin America to like rewrite it and redo it. But I
Okay.
still kept an eye on most of it and helped rewriting it.
Yeah.
And then when the time came to say goodbye to that adventure, I moved to the crypto world, and I was an IC again, like
Yeah.
coding 90% of my time.
Yeah.
Then I did AI with health tech, same thing, and IC as a founding engineer.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and that's what, like, the problem used to be that you probably struggled to get high earning jobs
Yeah.
with IC capabilities. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I think the whole tech lead and staff engineer like approach can, even if just for a little bit, or with some like asterisks, but it
Yeah.
can unblock that problem. It can get rid of that problem where the compensation is not as good as if you were a manager, right?
Of course.
So yeah, that's, I would say, as long as it keeps paying well, I'd be happy to continue being an IC.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the case when I feel like I want to do management again, or when I feel like my skills are better used in a management position. But as much as possible, I don't want to hear that feedback ever again.
Okay. Okay. So, being this person who has helped building a lot of stuff and whatever, how do you deal with tech debt? But wait, no, no, no. Before we go into that thing, let's hear from you what is, like, in your own words, tech debt.
Yeah. So for context, all this, like synonyms and semi-escomorphic approaches that we take in technology, sometimes do
Mm-hmm.
not map one to one. Like when you talk
Okay.
about like a lot of things, they do not. But tech debt is in particular a simile, or an equivalency that I
Mm-hmm.
do find for the most part maps to the real world. So I'm a very financial savvy guy,
Okay.
and when you think about debt, you can be dumb and incur into a lot of debt to buy your newest bike at Coppel or whatever, like Shrek or what have you.
Uh-huh.
But for the most part, debt should be an instrument that you use to strengthen your acquisitive power, to avoid losing capitalization whilst
Uh-huh.
still stretching your ability to acquire something or to even invest in something. If you find
Okay.
the house of your dreams,
Mm-hmm.
chances are you're not going to hesitate getting in debt, like getting
Mm-hmm.
getting a mortgage in order to
Yes.
buy that house.
Uh-huh.
You could be lucky enough to buy it like in cash, but chances are you aren't. I would say most people are not, and that does not mean that.
99% of the times. Right.
Correct. There was a movement in Vancouver. I lived in Vancouver for 9 years, and there was a movement of people complaining about gentrification and all those kind of things. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and their motto was, "I don't have a million." And I was like, "Well, I would say most people don't. Like,
Of course. Right.
arguably, most people don't. But that does not mean that most people cannot buy a house. Well,
Uh-huh.
maybe many don't, but a lot
Yeah.
of them can, because well, they incur into debt, they get
Yeah.
in a mortgage, and that doesn't mean that it's bad, as
Mm-hmm.
long as you know two things. First, that you have the ability, or that you'll likely have the ability to pay. You
Yeah.
never have full certainty, like unless your debt is insured, which is not common in Mexico. you
Mm-hmm.
you may, like, if you're fired or if you're laid off, you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna be in trouble. But
Of
that's not
course.
something that should freeze you, right? So you should have the reasonable assumption that you can pay back your debt under normal circumstances. And
Yeah.
second, what you're acquiring debt for has to be worth it, be it from a financial or from an emotional standpoint.
Okay.
You shouldn't go on debt to get the latest iPhone, or to get, like, a speaker to put your corridos tumbados music or whatever. You shouldn't. And
Can
if
we
you
go
do,
back? Can we go back in time, like 6 months ago, and have this talk again, this chat again, right?
did
Because
you did you get a speaker? Did you get a speaker?
no, the latest iPhone, I meant, right? Yeah, I couldn't picture myself listening to those things. To those things,
Yeah,
but
no, that's scary. Yeah.
Yeah, so please go ahead, because
Anyway,
this concept I've never heard about it, like the way you're explaining
yeah.
this,
So,
right?
but it's the same thing. It's the same thing.
Uh-huh.
So we've set this like a mindset already, right?
Mhm.
You also probably have like your aunt who is scared of of the banking system, of the financial system, and
Yes.
will tell you, "Oh no, I've never owned a credit card, and I've never gonna, and I always pay in cash." And I'm like, my dude, you're losing on so many things. Like for starters, on rewards points on your credit card, but also on the ability to pay things on installments. That, ah man, you're not gonna put in everything on installments. Like
Cool. No.
it's like dangerous, but every now and then you got to, right.
It's like
Uh,
when they say there is good debt and bad debt, right?
Precisely, and
Okay.
that's where I want us to get to. So
Uh-huh.
there are a lot of developers that are the equivalent of your scary uncle. Well, I'm not saying yours, but whoever in the
Mhm.
audience says a scary uncle,
Yeah.
or scary aunt that do not want to go into debt. The moment that you dare to propose a feature without enough test coverage, or with a couple of like caveats, or with a couple of risks, they
Uh-huh.
will freeze and they will throw a tantrum and they will refuse to work on it, or they will get bitter about it. And I've worked with plenty of them.
Mhm.
You shouldn't do that. But there are
Okay.
also developers, and I've been one of those developers at times, that will definitely not care about their ability to pay back the debt, and that they are
Okay.
going to do things they shouldn't. So, to recap, the whole concept of debt means doing things that you cannot do right now, that you cannot do in full quality right now, and
Uh-huh.
acquiring debt that you are supposed to pay back at some point, but you got to
Okay.
control it, right? And that's the sweet spot. So, two questions again: what I'm
Mhm.
acquiring with this debt, is there a possibility that it's going to be big and important and impactful enough to make
Mhm.
it worth it,
Yeah.
to incur in the risk, because every debt is risk and is overhead.
Of
And
course.
second, do I
Mhm.
have the possibility to pay it back under reasonable circumstances? You never know if there's going to be a layoff at your company. You never know if, like, I know your star like programmer is gonna quit or something, and then
Mhm.
your plans will change. But under normal circumstances, would you be able to pay back that debt without without impacting your capitalization, without impacting your bandwidth like considerably?
Mhm.
That's where I think people sometimes are very binary,
Yeah.
very yes or no, very
Uh-huh.
I hate debt or I don't care about it. But I think the trick lies in the balance. The devil is in the details.
Mhm.
So those are the two things that I generally look into when incurring debt. And yeah, generally debt is saying there are a couple of best practices and there are a couple of like things that maybe I should do a different way
Yeah.
in an ideal world. But given my current constraints and resources, I can probably take small shortcuts to make things
Okay.
happen. Right?
Cool. And have you ever been and on a company, or let's not talk about companies. Let's talk about projects, right? Have you ever worked on a system where the tech debt was so bad that it literally kept you up at night?
Not literally kept me up at night unless I was on call. I did work at a couple of systems, and that's a problem, right? Like right now that I'm on a rotation, life side rotation,
Mm-hmm.
the amount of debt increases the possibility of people being paged every couple of minutes, even at
Yeah.
midnight, particularly when it's a global system, and most systems I would say are global nowadays, right? So I've been in those situations, and I would say even not just from a technical depth standpoint, but also from a communicational depth perspective. I worked at a system that, from a technical depth point of view, it wasn't that bad, but I think we did a pretty job communicating to users, which were for the
Mm-hmm.
most part internal users, how to make use of the system. And most of the calls, most of the pages were because of misunderstandings on features and on capabilities, right? So that's part of the technical depth, or part of the depth when writing a system could as well be documentation.
Yeah.
And I've definitely been at places where we do not care enough about documentation. We do not document
Oh man.
when we have to, and then people like they're understandably going to use the resource that's at the reach, and the resource that's at the reach is a pay your duty incident that's going to wake you up at night. So it happens. It's not comfortable, and you end up learning from it. So that's probably another thing that you want to factor, right? How likely is it
Mhm.
that on call is going to be hell because of my decision to incur technical debt?
Okay. And what are the signs that tells you that you're going to face a big of a deal when you are managing that, like for example in teams, when people gets burned out, or I don't know, in terms of business and whatever, right? What are like the signs that you can foresee that is going to be a rewrite needed
So
or
as
something
a
like that?
system grows and as a team grows, it's normal to lose a little bit of cadence. It's normal to lose a little bit of rhythm. But if it's too
Uh-huh.
drastic, like if the dip on your burn rate, or on your, well, like whatever graph you use, if you use any chart to measure productivity, or on whatever metric you have for productivity, if it starts dipping, chances are there is a high amount of debt. Now, there is a lot of, and every day I read a lot of backlash against agile rituals, but there are a couple of them that are
Uh-huh.
worth it, like retrospectives, for example. Retrospectives are a fantastic tool to see if people are
Yeah.
actually complaining about things that are debt related and that could be paid off, like without a full system rewrite, right? So that's another good tool. And in general, the code starts getting messy, and I think that's where the value is on even managers being a little bit technical. That you can view the pull requests every now and
Hmm.
then and say, okay, this is getting complex, right? This is getting to like
Yeah.
to things are obfuscated. Like you gotta jump across a lot of different classes to do stuff, or you gotta put a lot of patches here and there.
Hmm.
And that generally starts smelling like tap dep to me. That's the TLDR, or the big three of
Hmm.
like how I tend to identify an increasing amount of debt or an unsustainable amount of debt.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you mentioned something about agile, right? Because I remember like 10 years ago, everything and everyone wants to be agile, right?
Yeah.
Like agile this, agile that, and whatever, right? And now I keep seeing on Reels, on Instagram, every social media that there is, and there are also on for example, what's the name of that site with a lot of blog posts? Is Millennium? No, Millennium.
Medium.
Medium, right?
Yeah.
Exactly that one. Yes, that they are speaking really heavily and bad about agile, right? Like, what
Uh,
has changed? I mean, like,
I mean, a lot of it may be for clout, to be honest. Like a lot
mhm,
of people sometimes complain about things and write about things either from their own flawed experience
of
or just
course,
for the sake of internet points. Like they just to get
for the
attention, just
likes.
to get eyeballs. Yeah, just for
Mhm.
engagement, right? Like
Yeah.
I mean, they sometimes do that, but there is a part that it's true that is true about it. And so a few years ago, a lot of mostly business folks and mostly management kind of people, like product
Mhm.
management or team management, all that, they started setting up their own consulting firms in order to sell you like particular versions of Agile, right? And they created this
Ah,
Scrum Master certification. And I'm like,
yeah.
my dude, I mean, and I'm gonna be frank, and I mean, I'm sorry if your podcast gets canceled because of this, but that's like you know what you like when you invited me, you know what was gonna happen,
I
right?
know
So,
what you're
uh,
about to say, but yeah, let me listen.
I mean, do you really need someone who purely runs a Scrum? Like, my man,
I
can you
know.
be a Jenny as well? Like what are you gonna do, right? So a lot of people started doing this, and it's like, you know what, when people weren't able to do anything good with their lives, they got into the military. Then when even then they failed, they became recruiters, and when even recruiters failed, they became scrum masters. So I'm like, why like it doesn't make sense. Ridiculous that if you want, but it's true
Yeah.
anyway. And there was also
It's like, but at the end, it's like a Pokemon evolution. You know, like for example, from
the
HR,
evolution.
then Scrum Master, but then finally you are a project manager, right?
Like,
And if you were technical or whatever, you get to study something like that. You are a technical project manager,
yes.
right? Yeah.
Anyway, and the other side is a lot of people who started selling what they call the Scrum for Enterprise or Agile for Enterprise,
Uh huh.
aka SAFe. And SAFe means something AL, something for Enterprise, right?
Hmm.
Scalable Agile for Enterprise. That's what SAFe means. So it was
Scalable.
all
Hmm.
yeah, safe. It was all like BS, so to speak. It was
Like
just
the
trying to
Nasdaq
make
thing,
money.
right?
Yeah, I just try to put rules where the whole point of agile is really not optimizing for rules but for outcomes, right? But
Okay.
if people feel like they do not have enough visibility or control, which are different things, they're probably going to go to this. Now, the visibility part, one may argue, had to do with I feel like developers sometimes being a little bit too ostracized, or sometimes just preferring to play Pokemon or whatever instead of working. Like, and I mean, I can say it because I get my Switch here. So, anyway, that's bad. Like, you gotta communicate. You gotta like maybe create tickets, even if they're not like deeply detailed, just to keep people like posted of what you're doing. But it is also because like sometimes managers were not didn't have enough like visibility or enough technical expertise to see how things were moving, and then when you gotta report it up, which you have to report it up,
Yeah.
they couldn't, and that's why they start expecting like more structured approaches to agile that eventually led to more like a waterfall thing. And I saw that a couple of weeks ago. My manager was out, my product manager was out as well, and
Hmm.
being the person with the highest rank in the team, I had to play not only being a staff engineer but also being a temporary engineering manager, right?
Yeah.
And everything was smooth until we had these review meetings,
Yeah.
and they were like, okay, you got like 5 strategic projects on your team with like 20 epics with I don't know how many dozens
Yeah.
of work items, and you got to report it tomorrow at 9 a.m. to leadership. And I was like,
Okay.
crap, I
Yes.
should have kept a closer eye on Jira, right? So
Oh.
when you think about it on that sense, you understand why people are wanting more control and more visibility, and why things like safe and quote unquote scrum masters or like whatever makes sense. But it's
Yeah.
just like it's not something that's good. It's just like a very bitter pill that we gotta take to fix some organizational problems, and it happens in every company, to be honest. So that's why I feel people are really, well, individual contributors are really sick of so-called agile. This is not
Hmm.
even a real agile. It's just like a set of processes that are
Yeah.
only tangentially more friendly, or tangentially friendlier than
Okay.
waterfall, right?
Yeah. Let's go back into the tech debt situation, right? So, and when is time? Because you were saying like there is bad debt, there is good debt, and but even if it is bad or if it is good, at some point you have to pay for it. And when is like, do you when is the time you think that is a good point to make a rewrite, to start from
Well,
scratch?
there is a moment or a condition or a couple of conditions under which you will not need to pay for debt, and I would say the most common one of them is when the product you created that accrued a lot of debt failed, not because of the debt itself, but
Mm-hmm.
because of the business like assumptions that it made. And in that case, like, I think that's when it makes sense to acquire debt, when
Mm-hmm.
you're not really sure that what you're doing is gonna stick, right? So
Okay.
when you probably have like your spidey sense tells you that it's going to work, but we cannot have spidey sense for dinner. Like, we
Yeah.
need to be sure that it's gonna work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to vibe code something and acquire a
Mm-hmm.
lot of depth in the process because you're not really sure if it's gonna work, or
Yeah.
because you're not really sure of how many iterations you will need,
Okay.
there is a possibility that it will not work. It's not going to be your fault, and therefore you won't have to pay debt. And fortunately, the investment you made is considerably smaller than if you wanted to make everything without debt from the get go, right?
Okay.
But conversely, the moment that the moment when what you're writing starts being mainstream, starts being really used, like it scales up,
Uh-huh.
and or you need to make enough changes with enough cadence that you want to be sure that what you got on the backbone is solid. So when things start getting popular, I would say
Mm-hmm.
that's the best moment to pay back debt. Also, when you
Mm-hmm.
get interns, like
Oh.
interns, no, I mean, and I'm not saying it on a like as you know, on a dismissive fashion.
Yeah.
But interns tend to be particularly good at paying debt because they got this fresh mindset. So
Okay.
when you're trying to like approach a problem, chances are you have like all this yeah, your mind is already blurry, it's already like full of all these presumptions, it's full of all these like assumptions and all that. And an intern is fresh for the most part, right?
I get
So
it.
you can certainly rely on them and tell them, hey, I need more coverage here, or I need you to get rid of this like old API, or I need you to like something like that, right? Another good moment to pay for debts are hackathons. So
Yeah.
recently we had an internal hackathon, and although most people try to build cool stuff, cool new
Yeah.
stuff, which I mean, it's cool, and you may argue that's what hackathons are mainly for: learn new things, build new stuff, meet new people. I was like, you know what? Honestly, I just want to clean the mess that I've made. And I
Mm-hmm.
sat down and I started, typing a lot of HTTP calls that I had without types, like on TypeScript, but with any's everywhere, or moving to like a core fetch with better interceptors rather than a weird access chain that we add internally. So all those kind of things that are depth to an extent, I
Mm-hmm.
ended up like working on them, right? So those are some of the moments when I think more depth can be paid back, right? And obviously, like when you see people like we mentioned that start feeling burned out, or that start behaving like they don't really care, like they don't have ownership, they don't have the sense of belonging, they are tired.
Yeah.
That means that, I mean, probably the moment is overdue and you gotta act as soon as possible, right?
And that's time. That's time for a regret.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, definitely, yeah.
Okay. So I understand really well what you just said. I mean, and it makes a lot of sense with the interns and whatever, right? Like, it's that they have a fresh couple of eyes. They are not biased, right? But all these people that was involved in the patches, in the fixing, and whatever, right? And starting again will be like doing the same thing, right?
Yes, yes, yes,
But
yes.
from scratch. I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
And how do you usually approach a rewrite? Where do you start?
I think it depends a lot on the parts that we're trying to rewrite. Like if you have like if it's just a subsystem that you're trying to rewrite,
Hmm.
the first thing you want to do is create a feature flag. And I think feature flags are one of the things that we tend to overlook more often than not. So you
Hmm.
create a feature flag. The point is you gotta make sure that the previous version of things is available as soon as possible. That rollbacks are less painful, are as painless as possible, right?
Okay.
And with Fearblex, generally, it's just an external system, like generally a cached system, like a key value pair kind of system that you can toggle on and off in a matter of seconds, right? So you
Hmm.
create your feature flag, decide a point where you're going to start like the fork, and
Yeah.
then either you clone what you had before, like if you're just going to, like for example, if it's a React set of components that you're going to change from class components to functional with hooks and whatever, you probably copy paste and start iterating on it, start like
Okay.
componentizing them all, function, making them all like functional.
Hmm.
Or if you're going to create a whole new system, you start probably like feature by feature. Perhaps the things that are the less impactful, like say a user profile that's generally just a crutch, or like a read-only part of the system with a
Hmm.
couple of filters. You start with that. You try to gauge like the excitement, and you try to gauge the performance, and you
Yeah.
start like building it, right? You can also follow a different path, and that's something we did. Like a few years ago, I was working at a telemedicine company, a very famous one,
Okay.
and I was in charge of the medical record system, so the one that doctors use to like say yes, no, write prescriptions, whatever. And one of my reports ended up rewriting it. I wrote it on React, and he ended up rewriting on React Native
Uh huh.
and React Native for web, because we realized that a lot of doctors, a lot of clinicians would use it when they were outside, like say on their kids' soccer classes or whatever,
Yeah.
pop up their phone and try to get some consultations on from there, right? So we realized that a mobile app would be needed. He did this experiment with React Native for web that to this day I'm not sure if it was as powerful as a core web app, but the advantage that we got, what we got in exchange, was something that was very easy to migrate, or I would say 95% of code was shared between the mobile app and the web app, right? So
Okay.
when he did it, he recreated most of the app in his spare time
Hmm.
and then presented it to me. And I was like, well, you got, I don't know, 75% of the app done, and we can see that it allows us to share 95% of the code base. I think it's going to make sense. So, pro, let's launch it, right? And let's, with a subset of users, and
Yeah.
then try to increase it like little by little, right?
Yeah.
When I worked at Microsoft, actually, what we did with most of the software is we had rings. That's how we call them, rings of users with different degrees of technical savviness and
Okay.
different degrees of like comfort and closeness to the company. So I built the first ring where the people who worked on the feature, then the people who worked at the company, then like power users, and so on and so forth. Like say 8 different rings. And things got, when we migrated stuff, we released it incrementally to each of these rings to try to make sure that the KPIs were still being met, right? So those are some of the strategies that I've seen used at different places.
Mm-hmm.
I think every team and every product has their own story, and they generally need a customized set of these rules or strategies. But what I think, like after 20 years of being on this thing, is knowing and being aware of all these different possible scenarios can help you choose. Like it widens your array, your yeah, like your palette of strategies to choose from, right?
Yeah, that is exactly where the conversation was about to go, because I was about to ask you, like, what practices, how did you take care of not fall into the tech debt again?
So I would start by asking why we're writing the thing. Like generally we're writing the thing because we want to avoid tech debt. And in order for that to go through, you gotta get buy-in from different stakeholders. You generally incurring tech debt because there is some point of pressure somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that point of pressure comes from a particular stakeholder. It may be like a consumer, it may be an internal user of the system, it may be like a reporting team, like the team that gets the data warehouse and reports up what are you doing. So there is generally a point of stress that
Oh,
makes people feel like they have to incur into debt. And again, dare I say, to incur into debt unnecessarily or irrationally, because there is like a rational amount of debt, and there is debt that you end up incurring into just because, and that you get the Electra guys knocking on your door or whatever. So you don't want that to happen.
mm-hmm.
But you want to incur into debt that makes sense. So where is the stress coming from? I as a leader try to identify where the stress coming from and try to talk with people. Like, you know you cannot let things stagnate. So you probably want to spread your team and start with 25% of them on the new project, while the
Yeah.
rest of them keeps maintaining the legacy system, and then slowly ramp it up until we are ready. And at the same time, like, you can start creating certain features or certain delighters on the migrated version only, so that
Yeah.
it makes people excited and it makes them more supportive of your initiative, right? So it's just a matter of finding the incentives and of communicating appropriately with our stakeholders to get
Yeah.
the buy-in from them. It all boils down to that. Like, I don't think anyone intentionally wants to create something that they do not feel proud of. We spent 10 days, 10 hours a day on in this, like with our butts on a computer, and we want to create things that we feel proud of, that we feel like happy, and that we feel like fulfilled with, not only financially but also emotionally and technically and professionally, right? So
Mm-hmm.
people do not generally bias towards acquiring debt. They bias towards incentives that may be at odds with minimizing debt. So the point is finding those incentives and try to nullify them or try to attenuate them, even if temporarily, right? So
Yeah.
if your main incentive is, I don't know, the number of PRs that you write, then of course you're gonna want to write like 3 or 4 PRs a day, even if they are skipping like some best practices, and they
Mm-hmm.
like they do not have like comments or whatever practice you are trying to incur into that minimizes debt. But if your incentive, if that incentive gets attenuated, and we go like, okay, for the next 6 months we're gonna ignore that KPI, or we're gonna like reward you for getting rid of that code or whatever, then you can certainly do that, right?
Right.
Big companies can take a couple of like liberties or a couple of freedoms that probably smaller companies can, but it may be interesting for those that are listening to think about how they can approach it. So, for example, they may create a weekly cleanup, or well, a cleanup week every quarter, right?
Yeah.
Where whenever you create a cleanup, like a dead code cleanup PR, you
Mm-hmm.
take the out, chunk it up, and then at the end we try to see who created most PRs that got accepted.
Yeah.
We filter by those tags and give a prize or at least a shout out, right, on the next all hands or whatever. So it's just a matter of incentives. I mean, I think that's the problem, that we tend to look at things as a job, and as a job where you got to produce code, like you get hit with a leash and you get fed some coffee and you end up like producing code. But where the incentives lie is what
Yeah.
minimizes all these kind of issues. Yeah.
And at the end, this kind of strategy is like you said at the very beginning, right? Like is a financial thing, right? That is a financial term. So these things that you are mentioning is like investing, right?
Hmm.
It's like prepaying or paying for not to go back on tech debt, right?
And minimizing interest, which
Yeah.
is like something that we tend to ignore. Like we go like, okay, the when you get your credit card statement, like what's the minimum payment? Yeah, my
Hmm.
dude, but you're still incurring into interest like forever
Yeah.
and ever, right? So you don't want to be in that situation. Like
Okay.
you can leverage like a little bit of debt when needed, but you
Hmm.
cannot live based on debt. Like
Okay.
that's not income. Yeah.
Good, great, great. So we are heading to the end of this episode, and I just want to thank you for being here. This was awesome, right? Sharing not just the technical side, but also the human side behind those big engineering decisions is awesome. Thank you very much. I know that a lot of folks listening are probably facing similar challenges right now. And so your insight is going to hit home,
No,
right?
anytime, when I can help, like I'm
I
here. Yeah, happy to.
Although I have a final question for you, right?
Yes.
I think you're gonna enjoy this, right? If you could rewrite any app in the world from scratch, no limits, what would it be?
Ooh, well, there are plenty of them. The one that's given me the most headaches that most people are probably familiar with in Mexico is the BBVA app.
Oh my god, I was thinking the same thing.
I mean, I know the team, like I know the person who took care of the
Yeah.
design system and of the UI parts,
Uh
and I
huh.
respect him greatly. And I know
Yeah.
a couple of engineers that worked at the bank, not on the mobile app, but on the bank, and I respect them.
Okay. Uh huh.
But the app itself, and look, like you kind of understand that probably the budget was comparatively low. It cannot be as good as Wise or as good as like what have you, even New, because New is purely a fintech, right?
Yeah.
But I'm like, could they probably get close to New, which is a very decent app? Like
Yes. Yes.
it's not perfect, but it's decent. Or
But let
Wise,
me tell you,
dollar app, whatever. Yeah.
let, let me tell you something that my wife told me the other day, right? Because we have several credit cards, right? And she says something like, you know, it is really bad, but it's the best one.
That's
Like
what I
perfect.
heard. Yeah, my wife has Citibanamex and she hates
Exactly.
it. And when I see
Yeah.
it breaking, I go like, yeah. But I mean, it is, I believe, the biggest or the most used bank by a
Yes.
big
In Mexico.
margin in Mexico.
Yeah.
So you would expect an improved law. And every payday, you do not see Banamex or you do not see HSBC or you do not see,
Yeah.
you see like
Yeah.
Bancomer
Exactly.
on as a trending topic. So that
Yeah.
means either it's very bad or because a lot of people use it, the impact
Well,
would be considerable, right?
probably you have to take into account that they probably are using agile methodology to iterate on the thing.
They're using safe.
It's better to have something out there, right? That just wait
Dude,
to be perfect. So
bro,
yeah,
you should invite the Scrum Master next time. The Scrum Master.
yeah.
Cool.
Okay, Vicente, thank you very much again. Right, I hope this isn't the last time we have you here in the Scale Dilemma. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Same thing, Darwin. Thank you very much for the invite.
Bye, man. Thank
Uh,
you. And that's a wrap. Today's biggest insight: that debt is like financial debt. It's not always bad, but ignoring it will always cost you. Whether you choose to refactor or rewrite, you are not just dealing with code, you are dealing with risk, team morale, and the future of your product. Huge thanks to Vicente for making the hard stuff feel real and relatable. Now, if you think making bold technical decisions is hard, imagine doing it in an industry where everything is rigid, regulated, and resistant to change. That's exactly what we'll talk about next, with someone who's trying to innovate in one of the toughest sectors out there, health tech. I'm Darwin English, and this is a Scaling Dilemma. See you next episode.